an interview that we had with Jinx in the Road to Rio, where he said that they were going to make a Korean team that was Solo, HSK, Jinx, Lakia, and Zyne, and no org wanted to support them. That's why they didn't make that team. They couldn't get org support. They couldn't find anybody that were interested in picking them up. So at the end of the day, I mean, the players did want to give it another go. That might have kept it alive, but the orgs were not having any of it. And MVP was probably the only org that was actually sticking around. And the second that they left, it's very rare that you see one org getting out and killing the whole scene, but they've done it.
Alrighty, we're back again for Geographically Challenged. This one is episode 7, and we have a lot to talk about today. There has been a lot of developing stories within the Asian region and ANZ as well, although a little bit more brief, I suppose, for the ANZ region. Obviously, we've got the Tiger changes that we want to talk about that may or may not be happening, the Chiefs roster changes as well, the fact that Korean CS is dead, and basically I've gathered you guys here to mourn Korean CS. And then all this stuff that's going on with Weibo, not only the Weibo Cup, but also this team that's now sort of been announced as well. So once again, we've got Pilsky, we've got Bleh, and great to have you guys back. Let's skip the introductions because everyone knows who we are at this point and dive straight into the discussion about what I think is probably the biggest news out of this week, which is the Tiger changes. So I know you are a big fan of Tiger, Bleh, so I'm going to give you this opportunity first. Now, if you guys haven't heard, if anyone's wondering what's been going on, Smooya and Snappi are supposedly going to be replacing NCL and 9 on that Tiger roster. Now, what is interesting about that is that they've just won Road to Rio, Bleh, and they looked relatively okay in doing so. And if they do change their roster here, they're going to theoretically lose 40% of their points because you lose 20% per player that you change, which would put them down to 960, which essentially, based on those points, would mean they would have come more or less last in Road to Rio because Beyond and Camel Rider's got 950 points. So obviously there's a lot to sort of break down here. Let's just go from the top, right? Let's just see, what is your initial reaction to this potential change, Bleh?
Well, my initial reaction was literally, what the fuck? Right, it's a little insane. Like, you hear about a lot of these tier 2, tier 3 Russian players coming to China to play, which makes sense. You know, you're not able to really make it into the CIS teams, and you get offered a pretty good chunk of money to play in China. So I expect to see that happen. We had the entire thing with Dosha supposed to join. Dosha, I forget who it was. I think Dosha and
No.
Who? Was it Mo?
It was Mo,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, Mo Dosh is supposed to join one of the Chinese lineups, but of course the entire Corona situation meant that didn't happen. But even then, I was like, let's be honest, Dosha hasn't really done much in a while. But then Smooya and Snappi getting picked up, I mean, these are like legit proper players who are at, I don't think they even reach a peaks of their careers, right? These are two players who have been on an upward trajectory. You're talking about a British kid, and Snappy's played in, the T1 scene of Danish Counter-Strike for a while now. So, I think what the fuck is a very, very valid expression, at least to express my reactions to what I've witnessed here. Obviously, the obvious reminder for me is Machine Gun joining Splice a while back, where who was in the lineup? I'm trying to remember that. It was Machine Gun, it was Asilian,
Crucial,
Crucial. Which was let's be honest, it was pretty wild of a lineup, right? And you saw how that one fared. Except this time around, it's like the West coming down towards the East and making with 3 Mongolian players. Now, aside from the initial shock, which I think everyone had, I still see a world where it kind of makes sense. Keeping everything aside, the fact that they have to move to Mongolia, how are they going to play online if there's not going to be international travel, the entire cultural differences, the style of play, keeping all that aside, I still feel like if you look at the elements right there, Urcast is, I wouldn't count him as like an Asian player or a Mongolian player, right? This guy's played in Greyhound for a while. He knows how to deal with international opposition, has a lot of experience, can speak English better than almost any other Asian player out there. You have Dobu, who's also kind of very similar to Urcast, I feel like. He is the more Mongolian Urcast. He can speak English very, very well. I don't know much about Cabal, like comms-wise, but I'm assuming the reason they've kept him there, it kind of makes sense. Now you have a dedicated operator in the form of Smooya, who is following the footsteps of Fets and trying to play in every continent possible. And of course, we have Snappi, who I regard as a pretty damn decent in-game leader. And I'm talking about compared to all the in-game leaders on the planet. Now you bring him to Asia by default, like Advent, who like Snappi by default becomes the best in-game leader in Asia right there. So I can see a world where this works. There is firepower. Dobu and Cabal are legit. All right, they've been legit for a while. Unfortunately, they've been playing with weird lineups, the firepower lineups and whatnot. And then you have Urkas. We've said enough about him. He knows what he's doing. Smooya definitely proven his worth, and Snappi is a very, very capable in-game leader. If you just look at his 5 elements and you ignore the nationalities and everything surrounding this lineup, it can work. It can still work. I doubt it's going to really happen, to be honest. I feel like it's one of those announcements which is just going to kind of be dead in the water. But I still feel like there is a world where this team could click.
It's fun to talk about. It seems like you're talking about from a CS in-game kind of perspective as to whether or not this roster could theoretically work on paper. So Pilsky, maybe it'd be good for you to give us your opinion on that as well, disregarding anything to do with like the logistics of it. Just talking about in the server, if this team actually exists and if they're all playing on whatever same ping, no problems, how do you think that works? Like, it looks like actually it could not be too bad, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's better than the roster they have at the moment. Even and that's not to put down the players that they have. I mean it's clear that they looked pretty decent, like in that Road to Rio, they won it. So the in-game leadership is not too bad of a job from NCL, and 9 was their highest rated player in the last couple of months, and he was quite good in that qualifiers. So, you can't really take away from the lineup they were already working with. For a full Mongolian lineup, as far as that goes, it's pretty good to basically take first place in a domestic tournament over some of the other regions. In theory, yeah, you bring a Danish in-game leader into this Asian team, it's going to give you an intangible that you can't find elsewhere. And in theory, there hasn't really been a fantastic AWPer from the Mongolian region. There's a couple of pretty good AWPers in Asia, but there isn't a really good standout Mongolian AWPer. I think you wouldn't say that 9's quite there yet, even though he had quite a good how would I say it? He had quite a good performance in Road to Rio, but he definitely needs to show us some more before he's going to be considered as one of the top AWPers or anything like that. So yeah, on paper, the roles make sense. Asia's and Mongolia in particular has an abundance of quite strong rifling players. So if you just stick a couple of specialist roles that are intangible and are things that are difficult for you to find elsewhere, then maybe it could work. And not to mention the fact that I would imagine Urkas and Dobu, having played in a lot of mixed rosters, Cabal as well, coming from 5 Power, will probably not have too many issues actually speaking English. So they would be the main candidates to keep over if you're going to be, taking this international approach.
Okay, theoretically, right, if this does end up happening, I don't know what your guys' thoughts on this have been, but from what I've seen, it seems like if this were to end up happening, Tiger as a roster would still be staying within Asia. So we're kind of bringing these 2 European players into the Asian region, which to my knowledge, and Bleh, you're probably someone that can touch on this better than I can, has never been done before, as an actual core player.
Like an EU player coming in? Oh, well, we did have Bondic for a while.
Right, true, yep.
Yeah, but and also he was alone, right? So at least with, again, I don't know how well Smooya and Snappi are, buddies or whatever, but at least if they have that company, it could work out. I do believe Tiger is the Chinese orc, right? So they will be boot camping probably in Shanghai, one of the central cities or whatever, where clearly they seem to have the money if they're going to get Snappi and Smooya. So I bet they're going to be boot camping together, staying together, and all of that. Now, how sustainable? That's a question, because look, Smooya leaving the UK and living in America or even Snappi for that matter, moving to America, for example, it's a far cry from moving to China or for that matter, East Asia, right? It's a massive cultural shift. I mentioned how Asian players struggle to adapt to life in the West. And it's not just like the culture, but also the food and whatnot. It's a big problem for many of these players. And I think it's the same way around. I don't think many of these players will be able to it's not just about homesickness or being professional. It's about, it will affect your maybe even your motivation after a while. So I don't know how sustainable that is going to be. Are they going to be? And the problem is just the sheer the distance between the countries. You can't even play online. You can't. You can probably try to have some not practice games, like you can play in an empty server perhaps, and figure out some tactics or whatnot. But you can't even scrim together, it's going to be unreasonable pings. There is no middle ground over there. I think China to Europe is going to be like close to 300 ping, if I'm not mistaken, and that's the same way the other way around. And got to bear in mind, you need the VPNs and everything to play in service in China. So online, it's not going to work. This cannot work in a remote setting whatsoever. Maybe if it was a coach, yeah, maybe. But yeah, so for them to move over to China and make this click, it's going to get tricky. Or the other way would be for the 3 Mongolians to move over to a bootcamp in Europe and maybe make that click. Urcas can do it. I think he's proven that. I think Doe is also a kid who is more like he's more open to exploring outside opportunities. I feel that, like, from whatever interaction I've had with him. Don't know much about Cabal, to be honest. He's a little bit more of the older player in that lineup, right? But yeah, I mean, for either thing to happen, it's going to be a big cultural shift. It's going to be a hard uprooting of your, whatever you're comfortable with. And that means how long will it sustain? Even if they have a magical run for like 3 or 4 months, after a while, it's going to start to be like, hey guys, I need to go back home for a while. I'm feeling homesick. The food's not agreeing with me. It could be something as basic as the food just being hard. And let's be real here. Unless you like Asian food, I like Asian food. So I have no issues with that. I know a lot of people who've been in China for a long time, and they struggle with the food because they're not used to such a complete change of diet. And it takes a while. And at one point it gets, you can't eat, you're struggling with the food. And what do you do? At one point you're like, is it worth it? I can't even eat goddamn food.
Yep.
Right? It's something as basic as that. So these are all the small little, I wouldn't say intangible, these are actual tangibles, and these are a lot of issues, but I still am excited. I still feel like if they can kind of like get through that barrier, that this is going to be a very interesting episode. I mean, rather interesting experiment, so to speak.
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be an interesting episode as well.
Sure.
Of course, there's a lot more to talk about, but this is really interesting to me, the fact that this is like even potentially being considered, particularly after Tiger have just won Road to Rio. Now, I want to go back to something that Bleh said here, and this is for you, Pilsky, right? Is that you had, Bleh, alluded to the fact that, obviously for Smooya and Snappi to move to Asia, that's at least what it looks like could be the case. But if the team were as a whole to move to Europe, right, that seems like a bigger gamble in my mind, actually, than for Smooya and Snappi to move to Mongolia or to China, because the reason for them moving to Asia, at the very least, is like essentially to bolster this team to make it a super team within the Asia region. And you say, okay, there's almost no chance that this team isn't the best team in Asia if Smooya and Snappi were to join. This team were to move to Europe, and they're playing in Europe, they're just going to get shit on, right? Am I on the same train of thought as you, Pilsky?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Europe's one of the most competitive regions. You'd be suicidal to try to move an Asian team to Europe and expect to have success, because let's look at it for what it is. These international rosters are not sustainable. They're created to achieve very specific goals. The orgs will spend out money to meet those goals and actually be able to, put themselves in a specific position that they're, looking to have some results and stuff like that. So it's not sustainable to move to Europe, because I don't think you're going to be meeting those goals that you're looking for unless you're trying to really invest in developing the players. But that doesn't necessarily, help your org unless you're really confident you're going to be retaining those players for a long time. So I really do think like it would be a move for the two lads to Europe, and then try to, I guess it's as sustainable as the results will give you. As many opportunities as you get to hit that Asia minor. It's the classic like Renegades example or 100 Thieves example of just like go to the Asia minor and try to qualify for the major and all that kind of stuff. Win all of those qualifiers in that China gets or East Asia gets, or the Asia qualifiers to go to these big international events. That's the only reason why you would make a move like that. I don't think anything else really makes sense, and I don't think it's going to be sustainable in the long term if it even happens, which I would be very surprised if it actually does come to fruition.
Yeah, theoretically, and the interesting thing about this move, potentially if they do move to China, is that I don't remember who told me this. Maybe it was you, Blair. Maybe it was Nick. But someone said that like the players on Tyloo are some of the highest earning players in CSGO, but all of the earnings are pretty unreported because obviously they're all tournaments from China that no one really cares about or no one really watches. But it could essentially be like an easy money farm for these players. And we're even talking about like Weibo Cup this week. It's a 50k USD tournament. It's not like a pittance. And if you bring a roster from Europe or a couple of players from Europe that are going to just dumpster every single one of these tournaments, I think you can make a pretty good living out of that.
Oh yeah, you could, and I don't think it's really the money though. But I do agree. Like, if these two guys come in, and they form a team. In the next 6 months, they could probably make more money just from tournament winnings than they ever would. In EU, for example, like I said, the competition is way high over there. The only reason I would see is it depends on your mentality and what you're looking out of having the CS:GO team. Like, let's say I was hypothetically the owner or like the manager of Tiger. I personally, it would depend on what my objectives are as a team owner. I would want to send the three Mongolians to Europe and actually make a good team, a team that could be a top 20, right? The grind is hard. You're not going to win many qualifiers. You're going to have to play a lot of these, some of the online cups, all those hell cases and loot bets and all those things. You won't really have the opportunity to make as much money as you could in China. You won't get the slots. Everything's going against you, but you will be a better team. You will 100%, against good competition, you will grow as a player and as a unit, right? But then you got to look at from the other side, from the perspective of like Bilski mentioned, of Smooya and Snappi. These are free slots. These are free fucking slots to almost every major tournament out there. You're once the COVID situation slowly dies down, your DreamHack Masters, your Pro Leagues, you name it. You name it. They're going to be in every one of those. And forget EU, it's hard enough as it is right now in NA, right? Or any other region for that matter. And they pretty much have a free ride. So now, how much that they stagnate in China, that is completely dependent on how they approach things, correct? I feel Snappi and Smooya, mainly Snappi, has enough experience and understanding of how Counter-Strike should be played the right way to kind of instill that into Tiger, even though their competition in Asia won't be as good as what they would be, facing in EU or NA. They wouldn't have the good practice they'd be looking for. What's the good teams over there? A Tyloo, maybe a Vici. That's about it, right? It's about it. It's not much to really work with, but I still believe that Snappy, as long as you have the protocols in order, and I'm sure he does, there could be the surprise factor. Think about it. You have Asian firepower. Snappy, who has already played with a lot of the EU teams. They could be a really big jack in a box with guns. I think it could still work. And I agree with Pilsky that moving to China would make there are more pros for those two moving to China rather than the other way around, basically.
All right. So this is like the big money question then, Pilsky. Do you actually want to see this happen?
Yeah, for the sake of my curiosity, I do want to see it happen. Do I actually legitimately think it's going to happen? I don't think it's actually going to happen. It doesn't even make sense. Like, in the normal global climate, without the massive health situation that is COVID, this would already be a bit of a like weird champ kind of move, But especially in this context where you can't travel internationally, you're limited by so many different factors. It's just really unlikely to happen. And I honestly don't think that it is, a straight win across the board. Like, it can set you back in a lot of other areas that aren't so straightforward. You're talking about if you're going to move them to Europe, right, or you're going to invest in the players or whatever. At some point, like, this experiment runs out. You're going to see these players. They don't stick around for the long term whenever there's a move like this. You're trying to win a very specific couple of qualifiers, and you kind of ride it out as long as you're successful with it and it's worth your time and your energy. But people get homesick, people get sick of experiments like this. So at the end of the day, like, okay, you got to make sure that in the set time that you're running this experiment, that it's actually going to meet the goals that you're looking for. Because if you don't, it's a waste of time, and you have to realize that once it's all over, you're going to be straight back to a position where you're probably going to have to be back to an Asian team again, or something along those lines. That's just the realistic expectations of what should happen. So regardless of whether it happens, regardless of what outcome and what goals they meet and achieve, that it's not a straight win across the board. There's always going to be a tricky circumstance down the road that they're going to have to tackle, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if that were to eventuate, then you'd arguably have been better off keeping this same team for a year, or let's say it lasts for a year, right? An extra year with this current Tiger roster, and they're probably better than they would be if they had a couple of Europeans for a year and then come back to the default roster. Anyway,
it's arguable, but yeah, it's just down to that same debate of investing in the players. And I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to think about as an org, because I mean, players aren't always loyal to orgs. Like, how long have these guys even been on Tiger? Like a couple of months.
True.
Before that, it was the August org. I don't know if it's the same owners or what the situation is there, but you're investing a lot into people, and we know that people don't always stick around in the same place for a long time. In fact, most of the time they don't.
All right, Bleh, your turn. Do you want to see it happen? You're muted. Bleh.
I'm muted. Yes.
Oh no! It's the first production error we've had. It's all right.
I know, right? It's actually
very
7
episodes. That's not a bad run.
That's not a bad
That's
run.
not bad, dude. It's better than most major TOs. The thing is, the thing is, I don't see anything happening out of Asian Counter-Strike, which is going to make me happy. Okay. Tyloo, we don't know what's happening with Tyloo right now. Fiji, we've spoken about the firepower. Are they going to make changes? We don't know. I don't think so. We know what the contractual hellscape is in China as well. South Korean Counter-Strike is dead. We're going to talk more about it later, obviously. Who else is there? Thai teams? Joke. Rest of Southeast Asia, doing jack shit. There's no one. There's literally nothing happening. But if these two guys come in, Tyler's the only kind of like the little rainbow in the dark, right? Where you're like, yes, there's something that could potentially happen. But they're not there yet. The way they won that road to Rio, and they've been together for a while. And I did say, yeah, finally they made something happen, but it wasn't convincing enough. They barely scripted a win over the Tyloo, who have 2 brand new members. They should have been performing much more better. Mm-hmm. So 100%, if these 2 players come in, they're going to be the best team in Asia. That goes without a doubt. Okay. For me, the exciting factor is they can now compete internationally. Like they will. I can bet a chocolate boot on that. That if this team actually,
it's a weird thing to bet.
I'm just remembering Vince, all right, and what he had to do. So I don't go for wild bets online. Yeah. If this team actually comes to fruition, they will qualify for international events. And if they play at least, I can say at least 2 or 3, they call it a surprise element, call it people not being prepared for them, call it the fact that no one really knows what to make of them, but there will be some success. I don't mind even seeing like a Tyloo run, which they had in Dreamhack Malmo, like in 2016. Yep. We haven't seen anything like that in a long time. So yes, I want it to happen. Do I believe it's going to happen? No, I agree with Pilsky. I think it's very unlikely looking at global climate, even keeping that out of the equation. It's just too much to expect. I don't think Counter-Strike, or for that matter, esports as a whole, is there yet when it comes to players moving over permanently. Like we have, let's say, for example, you have a Chinese player and he moves over to the US to play the NBA. That can really work. It's happened in the past, like in other big sporting leagues. I don't think esports is there yet. One day it will get there, but for right now, it's still a pipe dream. It's a good fantasy to have. I'm happy this happened. It makes me warm deep down inside. It gives me something to dream about when I'm sleeping, when I'm hugging my pillow and crying into it, thinking about the Asian Counter-Strike. But is it going to happen? Unlikely. Would I want it to happen? Yes.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I'm 100% on board with this happening. If it does happen, it's going to be sick. There's going to be some great storylines. There's going to be even some great matches that we're probably going to get to watch in the near future. But how it could logistically happen right now, I have no idea. And yeah, that's the key hang up for me. I'm just not sure that that's actually a realistic possibility. So I'm not sure who actually ended up breaking this news. I think it was HLTV, but I don't know what their source was. I don't know what the source is, but I definitely want to get on some of it so that we can go on that fantasy land.
I actually saw a tweet which was sent to I think it was dust2.dk. Some guy sent a tweet, some random Twitter account saying, "Hey, I have information about Smooya joining Tiger, the Mongolian team." And they were like, yeah, sure, right, totally believe you. And later on, the article actually came out. They're like, holy shit, he wasn't lying.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a random Twitter account out there. But no one's denied it, so it's happening, I guess.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I want to almost send a message to Urcast, but I also feel like that's kind of prying a little bit too deep, if it is a legitimate thing, right? I'm not a journalist. I'm not someone that needs to sort of break this kind of story. And I would really only be doing it for my own personal gain. So at the moment, I've elected not to do that. Maybe in the future, next episode, we'll have a better answer for you if I've gotten a little bit too greedy for that info. Either way, I think it's time for us to move into our next discussion, which is going to be surrounding the Chiefs changes. Now, I'm sure you are both aware of what's been going on here, but at the moment, what's happened is that Jinx, Skull, and Mayker have departed the roster or been removed from the roster. I think in some instances, 1 or 2 of those players may be leaving CSGO, and a couple of them were actually legitimately dropped from the roster. And what it looks like currently is the case is that they'll be replaced by Yam, Zeph, and Vexite. Now, a couple of those names, again, names that we've seen around the top of the AU scene for quite a long time. One of those names, someone that we haven't really seen at the top of the AU scene ever. Let's go with you, Pilsky, first, because you're obviously a little bit more native to the ANZ region. But I just want to start with, okay, did they have to make a change, right? Has the experiment, I call it experiment, but has the team had its run, and did it need to make a change based on the results that they've had of late?
Yeah. I think a change was needed. I think we mentioned this already on one of the other episodes of Geographically Challenged, where we're talking about the Chiefs roster. I think the players are just too inconsistent by nature to make it a consistent team, and I just don't think that really, none of them were bad players or anything like that, but it's like they weren't, contributing to the level of a team that's aiming to be the top team in the country. They're never going to be taking out Renegades. They have high peaks, but they're incredibly inconsistent. So end of the day, I did think there needed to be a change. I did not expect them to like completely overhaul the roster like this, but I honestly don't mind the approach. It's a roster that's been together for a very, very long time, so they've got a lot of data. They've got a lot of experience with the players and what they're like as people, what their limitations are, and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it wasn't even intentional to change the roster this much. Maybe it was a case of, we're going to be dropping X player, and then at the same time, another player doesn't want to play as much anymore, and maybe that's like the tipping point for them to actually step down. They don't want to have to go through another roster rebuild and go through all of that work and effort again. Or they don't. I mean, in the case of Jinx, he probably doesn't have the time to. The guy's like literally studying medicine or something, apparently, is what I heard. So, end of the day, I don't know how you juggle those things. As for the changes, I don't know. I mean, we'll talk to Blair about what he thinks about it first before we get into what we think about the changes, I guess.
Yep, I think that's a good way to sort of segue things into you then, Blair. Like, did you? I mean, I feel like you're probably on the same opinion, right? You've never really held Chiefs in a super high regard, at least from what I've gathered from our discussions on Geographically Challenged.
True, but I do remember I think you asked me this on the previous episode where you're like, do you think changes should be made? And I did mention how, maybe might as well stick it out and see what's going to happen, because the only way I see change being made is if it's a complete rehaul instead of 1 or 2 players, getting dropped or changed. And that's what they've gone for, the full rehaul. So I really can't blame them for it. Results, like Pilsky said, I don't think Chiefs or Oracle were just happy having a middling team there, right? And for whatever reasons, it didn't really work out. I find it interesting how, is Yam still coaching? I think he is,
Well,
right?
Yam was initially listed as the coach, but now it seems like he's actually moving into the core roster. So I can't imagine he can be the coach and a core player at the same time.
I also read in the interview that in an interview with him that he wasn't like against trying to play again, but who knows whether he's just like, it's a very short term. We're in the very early stages of picking up players, and it's not exactly clear who you would get. Like, some of the names that they've started with are not too bad, but for now he's playing.
Yeah, I think it's like a developing sort of situation. There's no official announcement yet from Chiefs, as far as I understand, as to what their roster will be. But they did play in the ANZ Champs qualifiers, which they didn't actually manage to make it through, by the way. So as of this point in time, Chiefs are not competing in ANZ Champs. And I also believe that they need to keep a core 3 for Dreamhack Spring, these Dreamhack events that are coming up shortly. So from what I understand is that Vexite is currently underage, so he can't compete in Dreamhack. I think he needs to be 16. I think he's currently 15. Same for ANZ Champs. Okay. So they're currently, I believe, keeping. I don't think it's Mayker. So it must be Skull, right? If you reckon Jinx is retiring, Pilsky, and I believe I've heard that as well.
I think I saw Jinx say he would, or Jinx or Skull, one of those two, say they would play out some matches if they needed to.
I think
a lot of them are doing that.
I think that's what's happening. Like, I think they're keeping the core 3 so that they can play in Dreamhack Spring, and then they're using Yam and Zeph as the 2 to replace either Skull and Mayker or Jinx and Mayker. And then whatever happens, obviously they're not playing in ANZ Champs, so I guess who knows what the fuck they're going to play in after Dreamhack Spring is done. But I guess that gives them time to build this roster up. My only concern is that, we're not going to really see much from them for quite a while, if that is the case.
Yeah, I feel, again, this kind of, it's been a little reminiscent for me with when Tux is playing for Chiefs, right? Like how they kind of, nothing against the guy. I mean, I feel like considering when all the circumstances regarding his ban, I felt like he should have been banned a while back. But, they committed to the fact, they wanted Tux in the lineup, and we saw how that affected their results overall, right? Yeah, they were winning a lot of local events and all that, but they couldn't take part in the majors. And now when you pick up a player like this, it's I feel like it's a little of a knee jerk. Like, you could have waited a bit more. You could have made him a 6th player or something like that. He's still a kid. You don't have to pay too much, I'd assume, to keep him as a 6th player in your lineup while you have a full-fledged 5-man roster who could play out the rest of
I
it,
don't know if
right?
any of the changes are like super official yet, though. Like, I don't think they've said anything about it. They're just playing with these people at the moment.
Yeah, I've seen articles about it, which is why I didn't know that they had the new players coming in. I wonder how much of say Yam had in Jinx Skull and Mayker leaving, because he did join in I think a month back.
Yeah,
That's
he's
about it
very
as a
recent
coach,
addition.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I would assume that as an org they would be listening to Yam a lot. I mean, the guy has been around forever, and he's extremely experienced. It's interesting how they've been together for quite a while, and then Yam joins in a month, almost exactly a month later, with their more disappointing recent results. Suddenly, it's like a big, massive shakeup, right? So I believe Yam has a say in that, because we've seen Chiefs had similar results in the past and nothing really changed. So I guess it's for the best for everyone involved. Doesn't look like there was any bad blood involved, at least based on some of the twit loners and all of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's time. Yeah, I would like to see a more competitive Australian scene. It doesn't have to be always Order and Renegades all the time. I think now Avant are like definitely the third best team, right? And apart from that, who else are there?
I mean, Avant is arguably even the second best team. I guess we haven't really seen much against Order. In Road to Rio, example, they didn't play. But had they been in Road to Rio, it could have been a completely different tournament. So there is a world where, we have this top three, and then I think the rest sort of fall off. If this is the roster that ends up actually happening, Pilsky, to me, that doesn't actually look like a roster that's going to compete at the top level with Avant and Order. What do you think?
For a while.
Oh, really? I don't know if I really agree with that. Vexite's a big unknown factor.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zeph is an automatic pickup. I think Zeph is like, I don't think he's underrated, but like his time in Order is like one of the most misleading things into how good you think a player is. I think Zeph is actually like a really, really good prospect for someone you would want to pick up if you're looking to find a player. So he should be an automatic addition if you can get him, in my opinion. He's like a really, really good rifler, really good firepower, really consistent player, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's already got experience playing in a good team at the top level of domestic competition. I think he pretty much ticks every box, if you ask me. So he should be an automatic addition. I think Yam is good enough to play at that level. We've seen it a lot. Obviously, he's not like hitting the heights of like when he was in IM or anything like that. He doesn't provide like an insane level of firepower like we know he's like potentially capable of, but he still plays just fine, and he's still got a good head on his shoulders. He's still got a really big wealth of experience that arguably the other Chiefs roster didn't have. We had a bunch of younger players with no real sort of really experienced figure in the team, like you saw in a lot of the other teams in Oz. As for Vexite, I honestly just haven't really seen him play at all, but I don't think it's a bad addition if you're going to go for some young talent. That would be the big question mark for me. But honestly, if you look at it, I mean, you put Yam on the roster, you have Apoc Dud on the AWP, who has been in some excellent form lately. Zeph is, in my opinion, a really, really good player. I think it's a better roster than they had before already, if you ask me. But I probably have a pretty strong opinion on it compared to some other people.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely an interesting topic. Now, obviously, there's that caveat, that question mark of Vexite. From what I've heard, and again, I'm on the same page as you, I've never actually really seen him play, but I've heard he's a sick player. I've heard a few teams are potentially interested, and I think that might be part of the reason why Chiefs are like reaching out early and trying to get ahead of the pack, presumably for when he does turn 16. I think that's what this whole thing is about. Either way, that aside, I'm just wondering, do you think actually Yam goes to IGL and Apoc Dud just stays as the primary AWPer and then no longer has to IGL? Or do you keep Apoc Dud as the IGL? Because in my mind, if Yam does go to IGL and Apoc Dud is then freed up as just a primary AWPer, that actually could be a big boost for him as an individual. Because it seemed like he had a little bit too much going on in that Chiefs roster.
Yeah, I mean, there's just too many factors that should go against someone like Apoc Dud consistently performing as he did. Like, he's a pretty special player because not many people can be, reasonably inexperienced and reasonably young as a person, and then in-game lead and AWP in a pretty strategic team and have good success and have still some good games. But like a lot of the other guys, he was pretty inconsistent. And I think putting that much burden on one player can probably create some of the problems that you saw on the old Chiefs roster with the inconsistencies and stuff like that. You can't have so much burden on one person. So yeah, maybe. I definitely think it takes some of the weight off to have a really experienced head like Yam come in, and if he's going to rifle, which he's probably just as capable of, even though he was a primary AWPer, he's also done rifling and stuff like that, and just gone for the hybrid. He's perfectly capable of doing that. I think it could be a pretty good move, and we know that Yam's done some in-game leading for a lot of different teams, including when he was overseas with Renegades and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a potential change that could work. I don't know how I necessarily feel about it. I guess it really all comes down to how motivated someone like Yam's going to be when he's already played overseas, and he's been kind of, how many times have we seen him just dip in and out of the domestic scene and return, with Tainted and all that kind of stuff. Now he's arguably stepping into a less promising roster in theory, you know what I mean? So that's going to be an interesting sort of thing to evaluate from his perspective, and that's, I guess, all down to him at the end of the day. But I guess for someone like Yam, previously going on to Tainted, you was essentially stepping into what was meant to be a super team. This is pretty far from it.
Yeah, but I think it's maybe an interesting project for him to take on. Do you have anything to chime in here, Bleh, as we sort of start to wind down the discussion about Chiefs? This is now about 2 weeks before we go into Dreamhack Spring for ANZ. So they've got about 2 weeks to figure out this roster. If they're going to go through with that core three, which I believe that they have to do, then I guess we see Yam and Zeph alongside Apocdad, Hugh and Skull, I think, or Jinx. Either way, I mean, what is your take? Do you think this is going to make much of a difference for the roster?
Well, I mean, Apok, that's legit, right? Zeph, seen him for a while. I think could work. I think if they can, whoever their fifth is, right, Skull or whoever. I think Humongous had I think Pilsky mentioned as well, how we had a kind of an anomaly of an event that time where he just popped off like crazy. If you can even replicate that to a decent degree, I think they can still be a pretty potent force. Remember, when you switch things up, there's not much. You can switch things up a lot. You can be a surprise package there, right? So they have a little bit of could have a little bit of an edge going into Dreamhack. However, looking at the ages, like you do mention like Vexad being 15, but even Zeph's pretty damn young.
Yeah.
He's actually 17. So you have Apok Dot, you have someone experienced like Yam as an in-game leader. You have these two kids coming in, and then potentially coming in, and then you who's remaining, and Humongous. That's if this lineup comes to fruition, if this becomes a thing, I feel like it's Chiefs investing the long term, like where they're building young talent and kind of grooming it instead of kind of cycling through the same old players in the ANZ scene. And obviously, take this with a big dose of salt, but that's something which I wouldn't blame Chiefs for. I think they've done this in the past as well. They've stuck with lineups despite everyone saying, hey, you probably want to change this player up because you're getting hamstrung because of that. And if investing in the long term works for them, well, more power to them. So yeah, I'm okay with this.
Hugh and Apok are really young as well. They're like 20 and 21.
Yeah,
and
that's an average age of less than. That's like 19. Average age of 19 for a team without Yam, obviously.
Me and Jordan follow a lot of the Chiefs guys on Twitter, and it's classic motherhood statements at the end of the day. Who knows how much you can read into it, but they're always preaching building long-term sustainability and investing in people. So that's what they've clearly made their motherhood statements to be. It's just a question of whether they're going to follow up on that. And I think picking up people like Zeph and Vexite does actually indicate that that's what they want to go going for.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I do think that they needed to make a change. Obviously the results were not quite there for, I'd say, a longer period, maybe even now about 3 months. And inevitably, people were starting to ask questions. It seemed like the cooking pot was starting to boil over a little bit. And so now we've decided to make those changes. So I'm going to wait and see what happens. Once we get to see Dreamhack Spring, we'll get a better idea of how this roster is going to perform. And I'm sure we'll give our updated thoughts on that in a later episode of Geographically Challenged. Now, gentlemen, we move on to the morning aspect of the Geographically Challenged. And that's morning with a U, not morning without a U, as we press Fs in chat for Korean CSGO. Unfortunately, it seems as though Korean CSGO is absolutely dead and no one is going to be able to save it.
How do you do the F thing at the end? Is that... No, that's not how FaZe does it.
That's backwards on my screen, Pilsky.
Whatever. Everyone gets the point. The point is Korean Counter-Strike is dead. It's a little sad. I wish I had a drink of whiskey here to sip while I'm talking about it. It's kind of sad because the best Asian team to touch Counter-Strike was a Korean team 1.6, right? Solo and gang. And then you see CSGO happening, and then it took a while for Korea to pick up CSGO, but when they did, for a moment there, as we all know, it looked promising. It was getting us hard. It was like, yeah, boy, the Koreans are back, right? And I guess it makes business sense. If you look at Korea as a video gaming country, as an esports country, they do operate outside the normal hive mind of what esports is supposed to be in the rest of the world, or for that matter, even Asia, right? They're so very unique in the way they operate and the games they play and how it works for them. So if all these orgs, Riot being Riot, and their presence in South Korea being massive, look at League of Legends, like that's kind of obvious. They're obviously going to be pushing Valorant in a very heavy way. The only server right now in Asia for Valorant is in South Korea. That's how much of emphasis they're putting in South Korea. Meanwhile, Valve never really pushed for CSGO in South Korea at all, ever. Apart from that one minor that happened in Seoul, nothing else. I don't even think it was in Seoul. It's one of the other cities, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's a difference in approach of Riot and Valve when it comes to South Korea. And the thing is, you need to make these pushes in certain countries, especially in South Korea. And it makes 100% sense for me for these players, because let's be real here. They were already losing, their jobs in the orgs. Orgs are switching over, and as an org as well, why would I want to have a team of players who aren't really going to achieve much because of lack of competition, lack of talent? Like we said, running jokers, there's a talent pool of like 15 players in South Korea. There's not much you can do with that. That is just ridiculously small. So F's in the chat. It's a sad day for South Korean Counter-Strike. Hopefully, in the next iteration, we'll see a South Korean team doing well again. But I do believe this is it for them. But I do wish them good luck, and I hope they do well in Valorant. I hope they at least show that Asian FPS is a thing.
Yeah. Definitely. I want to give some
Fuck
context
shit up in that game.
And by the way,
right.
F's in the comment section below. Help us out with the algorithm. Thanks, boys. No, I want to give some context as to why we're sort of talking about this, right? Because this has been like a slow burn, Obviously, Bleh, you mentioned MVP moving over to Valorant. We've just seen Lakia and Jinx have departed the Lucid Dream roster, which was a roster that we were kind of excited about. Obviously, they failed in Road to Rio. Now they've announced that they're moving to Valorant as well. Zeta is no longer playing with Tyloo. He's currently on the bench. I guess not playing Counter-Strike. He may be playing some Valorant on the side. He hasn't necessarily officially announced any kind of move over, nor has Zine, who, as I believe now, is the only currently competing Korean player remaining in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Obviously, he's playing for BTRG. So I think if you guys can't think of anyone else, Zine is the only player still remaining from Korean Counter-Strike. And I had a little bit of a look back as well, and just to sort of try and see whether or not maybe there was a few players that we haven't seen before that are still playing. Not even that, right? I looked in the Dreamhack Spring qualifiers. Not a single Korean team or player was trying to qualify for that. There was tons of Mongolians, tons of Thai teams, even some Vietnamese teams. Come on. And not a single Korean player at all. So they've all gone to Valorant. And it really now to me, Pilski, feels like we're at the end of an era. I don't think Korean Counter-Strike comes back from this.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because, if you want to summarize it, no one ever asked for Korean CS. It came... They had that MVP team with Argency and Zine and all those blokes or whatever, and then they had that Gosu team. But the thing that sort of revived it was the 1.6's return to Go, that really sort of ignited things and got people interested again. And that's what it actually took to get that fire burning. And I think at it last year, we had the Korean super team with MVP PK, or very close to it.
Yeah.
And that we basically got what's the word? Jailbaited, essentially. I got edged by that,
I think
it
the word
really
is
got
cucked.
the climax.
You got cucked.
So that was very disappointing. I think
that happened to all of us. Yeah, true.
And I just want to highlight something that we've talked about it a couple times between us, but we haven't actually talked about something on the podcast, which is an interview that we had with Jinx in the Road to Rio, where he said that they were going to make a Korean team that was Solo, HSK, Jinx, Lakia, and Zine, and no org wanted to support them. That's why they didn't make that team. They couldn't get org support. They couldn't find anybody that were interested in picking them up. So at the end of the day, I mean, the players did want to give it another go. That might have kept it alive, but the orgs were not having any of it, and MVP was probably the only org that was actually sticking around. And the second that they left, it's very rare that you see one org getting out and killing the whole scene, but they've done it.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And I totally echo your thoughts as well, Blair. Like, I really hope that these guys are able to find a good career in Valorant, because a lot of them were incredible players to watch. Like, as individuals, they were quite exciting, even as a roster. And I got along with a lot of them as well. You know, I obviously didn't have great chats with them a lot of the time, but, you know, when I did get to meet them and when I did get to talk to them, they seemed like good guys. So I think, you know, the Southeast Asian or the Asian scene in general is just a little bit worse off for not having the Koreans playing in Counter-Strike anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I'm surprised that none of the Chinese orgs were looking to pick them up, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll reach out to some of the Chinese orgs. I don't know what really went down there. The South Korean orgs are picking up Counter-Strike. That's not a big surprise. It's been a thing for a while right now. But there's so many Chinese orgs, and that lineup you just mentioned is better than 90% of the Chinese teams out there.
Yeah, that's not even better. Like the dream team. I mean, for me, the dream team, you get like Zine, Zeta, Stacks, maybe like Jinx, Lucky, or something like that. Like, that is actually a team that could be best in Asia right now if you made it. If you made that team tomorrow, that could actually be best in Asia.
And it's wild how not a single Chinese org were looking to pick them up. I'm sure they would have reached out, or it would have been heard. Like, you tend to hear this when you're involved in the, you know, as an org or as a team owner, or whatever, or the players be telling stuff like, hey, you know, there's this team out there, want to pick them up. And that's how it works in Asia. And I'm surprised no one picked them up. So, well, it is what it is. RIP to Korean Counter-Strike. I'll see them again in 2023 when Source 3 comes out with Counter-Strike 3.
Let's fucking hope so.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it. I can't wait to see them in Valorant, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm sure we'll keep a little bit of an eye on that game or whatever. I think I was already watching a podcast the other day where Thorin was saying that everyone who thinks they're going to be successful in Valorant's fucked because there's a Korean server on Valorant. And I think if half of these players start to play it, or some of the guys from Overwatch, or, you know, Korean players in general, if they get hooked on this game, I mean, they've already got a couple of players who've got some translatable CS experience. They've got some veterans who know how to play a CS-like game in combination with players who know how to play Overwatch at extremely high level, and the work ethic and the orgs to support them, the established scene. I think I would agree with that. I think everyone's fucked.
I think the one reason I'm excited there is one thing I've always harped on about the Korean, like the old Project KR guys, was how they never really had any information dissemination amongst the Korean players when it comes to Counter-Strike. There's always the 5 of them. It was Bale, Glow, Solo, those guys, right? Always together, never really helping the newer generation to rise up. And it only happened much later when MVP, PK, and MVP kind of like melded together. Then we had like Zine, Zeta, and all these guys play with the likes of Solo and Zeph and these boys. And that's how we saw the entire scene rise up, because the old guys, they started like telling them how they approach Counter-Strike, their philosophy of Counter-Strike, that elevated their level. And unfortunately, the pool of talent was so small in South Korea that it remained stuck in that bubble of 12, 15 players. Now with Valorant coming in, and I'm telling you, it's going to explode in South Korea. I can just feel it, just the way Overwatch did. If that happens now, imagine. Forget like, you know, Solo and the old guys, who obviously will have a great impact. Then you look at even people like Zine and Zeta, people whose opinions I really respect when it comes to Counter-Strike, and they're young as well. Imagine now they can pick and choose from all these freaks who are going to be sitting in PC bags for like 18 hours, just wrecking people. I agree with Thorin. I 100% agree with Duncan that this is if you're like some watched of Counter-Strike player in North America thinking you're going to make it be a top 1, top 3 team, watch out, boys. The Koreans are going to be coming for you.
You're going to get cooked. Absolutely cooked.
It's the vindication that we've been waiting for Geographically Challenged, where we're no longer geographically challenged.
I don't care. I'll take it.
Everyone else is geographically challenged now. Get fucked. Anyway,
that's the only way we'll get any success, Jordan. Take credit for South Korea, one of the strongest esports scenes in the world.
Let's go, mate. I'm on board. I love Koreans. Look, this is a bit of a bonus question, and maybe not too related to the fact that Korean CS is dying. But do you think if Valorant comes out, right, and a bunch of new players come into this kind of a genre, there may be some that switch back over to Counter-Strike, and there may be a resurgence of Korean Counter-Strike as a result of Valorant? Because I can't see anyone going, hey, I'm going to pick up Counter-Strike as a new game. But I can see potentially someone going, hey, I'm going to pick up Valorant, and then seeing Counter-Strike and being like, maybe I want to play that, and maybe I want to give that one a try.
I think that's a very good point, and I think it would be applicable to the rest of the world. I feel like that's going to happen a lot. Lots of people are going to be like, "Oh, this is cool. This is Valorant. I don't really play FPS games. This is League of Legends. This is like Riot's made it, so we're going to try it out." They're going to try it out, and then they're going to be like, "Oh, what's this Counter-Strike?" They're going to face a lot of Counter-Strike players there. Oh, let's try Counter-Strike. That might really click, and I do believe that's going to happen in the rest of the world. Korea, I don't know. I still believe the PC ban culture is so very strong even now. I know that the culture has kind of changed in South Korea, where people now have their own computers, personal computers at home, so they can, play the games they want. But at the same time, I think the PC ban culture really defines how gaming or esports culture is in Korea. So even if you have your own PC, you want to play amongst other Koreans, and everyone who are playing PC bans are like, "Oh, we're going to play Overwatch or Valorant." They're going to play Counter-Strike with you, right? So even though I agree that people might be curious about it, just the lack of presence of Counter-Strike in these PC bans just might prevent that thing from happening, from transpiring. I would love to see that happen, but I feel it's just a nice dream to have.
Do you have any input there, Pilsky?
Yeah, I think it's much less likely to happen in Korea because, PC ban culture. Also, they seem to care a lot about organ developer support. So, I mean, that's going to be a big barrier. And the thing is, like, look, we're talking about how sick Korea is in Counter-Strike, or some of the Korean players are in Counter-Strike at the moment, the potential that they have. They didn't just come out of nowhere, This has been 3 years in the making, back to when the PK roster returned, including, all the hard work that was put in by that MVP roster before. Once they start committing all of that into a new game, there's not going to be any stepping back into the Asian scene and being capable of what they are at this current moment in time. That's going to be a setback that they're going to have to take time to overcome once again. So I feel like the window for Korean CS was last year. Maybe it's even starting to slip now, So I think they've already kind of missed the window by committing to Valorant, and I don't think it's going to be possible to be able to reclaim that unless they're going to put in some hard yards down the road.
Definitely. Anyway, that is that. And I will say, obviously, I think all of us wish the best for those guys moving over to Valorant. And if there is one thing that's going to make me want to cast Valorant, to be honest, it's actually going to be Counter-Strike players moving over to Valorant and seeing those storylines.
I'll cast whipping out whatever the equivalent of the orb is and just fucking up some Americans. Let's go.
Yeah, like as far as I'm concerned.
We need to get service first, boys. Let's be real.
Yeah. I'm not like overly like hyped and crazy about the game like everyone else seems to be. Like I still think there's a fair way to go for it. And I'm still very much of the opinion that Counter-Strike is, at least at the moment, looking like the better game. But if a lot of these players move over, I think the storylines definitely deserve to be told in their entirety, right? It's not just going to be, let's start the storyline from Valorant. Let's continue the storyline over from Counter-Strike. I think that's really important. So
I think it's such a sick storyline, and it has so much potential to just go away so easily. Yeah.
Well, maybe there is a world where we have another podcast talking about Valorant one day. We'll see where that ends up. But for now, we're going to put Korean CSGO to bed, although it seems to have already done that for itself.
Good night, sweet prince.
Rest in peace. As we move on to Chinese Counter-Strike, which seems to be picking up. It's really ramping up at the moment, it seems like. Not least because Weibo seems to now be getting involved and throwing a bit of money around. So let's talk about Weibo Cup. It is a big tournament that's happening around in China. We've talked about it in previous episodes. I can't remember which one it was. Just go back and have a look. There's one of the titles features Weibo Cup. If you want to know what it is, it's that 50k cup that's featuring basically all of the teams that kind of matter within the Asian region. And we said we'd give you some updates. Well, here the updates are. We have done the group stages, the round robin stage essentially, which was a Swiss bracket where teams had to go 3-0, or they essentially win 3, you're in, lose 3 and you're out. And so the teams that have made it through into playoffs, it's a top 8 to playoffs, 1-3, which is very interesting. They went 3-0, so we'll talk about that. Tyloo obviously made it 3-0. Tiger and Vici went 3-1. Invictus went 3-1. Linvision, D13, and BTRG were 3-2. So what you're going to notice there immediately is that none of the Thai teams have made it through to the top 8. Sigma's out, Beyond's out, Lucid is out.
Surprise.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the case of Lucid Dream, not a huge surprise given the roster changes that they've been having. Beyond going 1-3, they kind of look pretty crap in Road to Rio as well. Sigma made a good run, but they did end up losing to BTRG. O2 Esports, I don't even know who that is. It's a Chinese team. Marzalai didn't make it through. Huatsai didn't make it through, which, again, not a huge surprise. I understand that they don't actually prac. They just play a little bit. Team Asta went 0-3 as well. So most of the teams that you would probably expect to make it through to the top 8 did make it through to the top 8. But Pilski, I know you have had some opinions on 1-3 in the past, in that they haven't really done anything to make you feel too excited about that roster. But what about a 3-0? They beat Beyond, 0-2, and they actually 2-0'd Vici as well. I don't know how that's happened. I might actually dig a little bit deeper as you're discussing this, because I feel like there might be something a little bit sus going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have. They don't have Captain. I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia, but they don't have Captain Mo on the roster anymore. They've got Bottle now. At the end of last month, they picked up Bottle.
You're a fan,
big fan of that. We love to see that, and maybe that's the firepower that they need. They've got Casa, very experienced player. They've got DD, so they got a couple of guys who can pop off. They got someone with a good head on their shoulders. Maybe that's the recipe for success. I still don't see this roster as really being.
Can I see where the lineup is? I can't find it.
I'm on Wikipedia.
Oh, look at
I mean, I went on HLTV.
I see it.
HLTV never really helps you with this kind of thing. Wikipedia is the way to go.
Yeah, that's just the thing for like all Asian CS. Don't go to HLTV. Go to Wikipedia. It's much better for anyone that's wondering.
So I mean,
DD, Karsa, Ian, Bottle. Child. Okay, I don't know who Child King is.
Yeah, I don't know who that is either.
Karsa in-game leader, DD and Bottle definitely
DD,
rock
Bottle,
riders.
go kill. That's it. That's all you need to know.
That's a non-meme team. That's a solid team. Are they going to be best team in China or top 3 consistently? No. But are they going to be better than the rest of some of these scrub teams you see here? Have 100%. So yeah, looking at his lineup, it makes much more sense to me, because I was like, wait, who's even playing in the lineup initially?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the results here. I'm on the 5e play match page. Bottle went 56 and 37, so he was plus 19, 1.41 rating, and Child King was plus 7 for the series as well. So it looks like another underperformance from Zoking, and Orman also wasn't able to put many numbers on the board. Same for Jamyoung. So when you see Advent second top fragging for Vici, that's when you know something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
So definitely looks like a bit of an underperformance from Vici, and obviously Bottle coming in and kind of destroying as well. But hey, that's good news for 1-3, getting out 3-0. But by and large, like I look at this and I say those are probably the teams that I would have expected to go through anyway. I might have actually backed Sigma over BTRG based on what's been going on with BTRG's roster of late. Who knows what's going on there? We've seen some interesting screenshots. I don't really want to go into detail about that. But yeah, I mean, the roster seems like it's chugging along fine, I guess. Impression X here at Zion, Eeyore, and Genius. It's starting to look like a team that actually could be relevant.
Also, I just figured out that their full name is Big Time Regal Gaming.
Yep.
I did not know that. TIL.
Anyway, let's not touch too much on this Weibo Cup. If anyone wants more information on that, just look it up on Liquidpedia. You can see what's going on.
Although, the Invictus lineup, did we speak about that? That's not bad.
No,
guys
we
were together.
That's not bad. Not a bad lineup.
Yeah, this is actually even better than 1-3 if you ask me. You have Flying, you have Destroyer, who is one weird player to watch, but it works. You got Xiaosage and Viva, and Oi.
Yeah, even O2's got like a couple of guys who you know, like Shuada Pai. So it's just you keep seeing like a wealth of experience and players in the Chinese scene that can sort of pop up in some of these teams, and it's really being spread around. You're seeing players being traded back and forth like crazy, kind of like the Thai scene. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Again, the Thai teams have really not shown anything, which is kind of sad. But I think a theory that I had at least is that Sigma might be actually in better form than some of the other Thai teams, which is why I was disappointed to not see them in some of these main tournaments. And I think
you gotta let this go.
Look, Sigma's playing a little better. The 2 and 3, that's not as bad.
It's slippery slope, man. Come on.
I was going to say, I think we probably needed a segment in this episode for Thai CS being dead as well. Not that it's dead, it's that it's dead as far as I'm concerned. You know, like friendship ended with Thai CS. Now Mongolian CS is my best friend.
Can we like have the next episode being like, you know, the state of Thai CS and just like 45 minutes of Pili in a bathtub, just like with a shower on top of him, just hugging his knees and crying in a corner while drinking.
I'm in a little rowboat in the middle of a lake, and there's just leaks fucking spouting everywhere, and I'm just trying to sticky tape them all up. No, it's okay. We can fix this. It's fine. And I'm just slowly sinking, hoping that things will be able to turn around and I can paddle myself to shore.
It's a great analogy for Thai Counter-Strike right now, especially with what's going on with Lucid. And actually, that's maybe something that we should probably talk about. I do. We didn't actually have a segment for this planned, but I do kind of want to touch on that very briefly because, like, that's pretty interesting. The fact that they've dropped Jinx and Lakia, okay, fair enough. But the question is, who do they pick up? Now, you may think there's a couple of players that are potentially on the market right now, named Zeta and Freeman, who are currently not playing Counter-Strike. They're not playing for Tyloo at the moment. I wonder if that's something that could eventuate.
That's not going to happen.
Surely. Come on. Surely you want to see that.
It's not going to happen. No, they should just pick up Thai players. Mate.
If they're going to pick up 2 Korean players, surely they can pick up Zeta and Freeman as well.
Honestly, I'm not going to be too surprised if they take players from Beyond or Sigma or something like that again. That's the most likely outcome if you are. Especially because Sigma is playing not too badly at the moment. That's probably what I'd be looking at. But I don't know about the workings of these orgs and how sort of tied up some of these players are. So I wouldn't be able to tell you how likely some of that stuff.
What do you think, Bleh? Who's the 2 that get taken to Lucid Dream? Are they going to upgrade their roster, or is this going to end up being a downgrade, having lost the Koreans?
I don't know. I don't think they're going to pick up the Koreans anymore. I think they are done with that experiment, I feel like.
You go back to Thai.
Yeah, I just think they're going to go back to Thailand. They can't pick up anyone from Beyond or Sigma, knowing how the contracts are. So the free agents, maybe a couple of players from maybe Cigarettes, a few of the streamers. I don't know how much Cigarettes would be invested in going back to streaming again, to playing again, because he's doing very well as a streamer for variety games and all of that. But I do believe there is still a plethora of talent in the Thai scene where you can just pick up a couple and you can just make it click without even spending too much of money, right? So I think that would be my goal here. Maybe not recycle the same players. I'm just surprised how they seem to have a very good domestic circuit. Yep. And yet it's the same bunch of guys we see being swapped around as 3 or 4 lineups time and time again. I'd like to see them go for a few more unknown names. It's been a while since I've been shocked seeing some new names like, KNTZ. I remember when I saw him, I'm like, oh, new player, Cunts. I'm going to call him that. Then CVBK came out.
There's potential for some more great handles, that's for sure.
Exactly, right? I think I missed the new wild whack handles you find from ICS. And I also missed the fact that every time they come up, they've always surprised me. It's like they consistently are good. You look at all the players in these top 3, top 4 Thai teams, and you can't even single a person out saying, he's not that great. No, they all have their moments. They can all pop off. So I'd like to see them, probably dig deep, find a couple of players going to stick around for a while. And they seem to be very invested in making this lineup work. So I don't want a knee-jerk reaction and just picking up, let's pick up the Freeman and whoever right now. Dude, Freeman's going to go back to Vici if they even come knocking. Just waiting for that phone call. Like, Train, hey, you want to come back and play with Advent? Yes. Fuck you guys. This is going to get the fuck out of there.
Fuck you.
You don't want that to happen. So just stick with the Thai scene, pick up a couple of players, minimize the comms issues. You already are struggling playing Counter-Strike. Why do you want to add an extra layer of, problems with communication, right? Just make it simple.
Interesting then, as a segue into our next discussion, which is the Weibo team that's been created. So you talk about potential communication issues. How about putting a Chinese player, a Taiwanese player? Where's Killmatic from? Is that Russia? I'm just looking at the flags. I'm trying to figure them out as we go.
He's Russian.
You got a Russian, and then you got another Chinese player and an Indonesian as well in the same team. So let's talk about the Weibo team, which is supposedly going to feature these teams. Now, this is not 100% confirmed. This was a breaking news that was released by CSGO to Asia earlier on in the week. But we've been hearing rumblings about this for a little while. I've heard that Forsaken was going to be joining a Chinese team even a month ago, or a couple of months ago now. So it doesn't seem like something that's going to sort of go by the wayside. Blair, what's your take on this team? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do you want to see this team happen? And who would you have had on this team in an ideal world? Because realistically, I would say this is probably not the team that you want to pick up as Weibo for your first entry into Counter-Strike.
100% not. At the same time, I woke up to this news in the morning, as I think you posted on WhatsApp, in our WhatsApp group, and I just woke up and I'm like, am I still dreaming, or what the fuck is going on, right? Oh, I think you guys can hear playing.
Yeah, I was just thinking, is World War III starting outside?
Hey, it just could happen.
It sounds like a jet plane just flying right past your window.
Yeah, that was a jet plane.
Monka S.
All right, let's take a look at the lineup they have here. We have Fjorn, who is Chinese. You have Marek. Marek has been around the scene for a while.
Yep.
In fact, he's been around for a very, very long time. He's pretty solid, Taiwanese player. We have Killmatic, our Igor Storozok, definitely Russian. We got Dreamer, who's also been there for like 3-4 years, been around. And then comes to my golden child, Forsaken. Not that one. Talking about Xcurate's younger brother, who I saw playing Counter-Strike like a couple of years back, just shitting all over. Just for those of you who probably haven't heard me, praise this kid, I was shitting over the best players in Southeast Asia, just running in and just knocking heads off. It's like 13 or 14, and I asked Xcurate, Kevin, pick him up. Bented, you, and you. Bented, you, and your brother. Like that 3 core right there, baby. That's something that could happen. There's like, no, he's got to finish school first. So I'm guessing that he has completed like basic school. He's out of high school. I think he's like 15 now.
Or
he's still very, very young.
Alternatively, Chinese money has just been thrown at him, and he's like, I can't say no to this.
Fuck you, Xcurate. Fuck you, senpai.
Yeah, maybe.
Senpai or Nichan, whatever. Maybe, could be. I would not want his introduction to actual proper Counter-Strike being in his lineup. I won't lie.
Yep.
I don't think it's really going to work. I think this is more of a gimmick team where we was like, oh, who's available? All right, we got Dreamer, we got Marek. Been around for a while. Killmatic's been farming cash in China as well. Fine, let's do it. And if it was not for Forsaken being in this lineup, I'd be like, who cares? But him being here, it worries me, man. He's like the one little glimmer of hope I still have in the youth when it comes to Asian Counter-Strike. I still feel like him being picked up by one of these. We speak about these our English-speaking super team in Southeast Asia, like rest of Asia, right? Giving him like an extra year or so, I feel like he would definitely slot in right there. I think he could really be a good fit. Imagine a world with Xcurate and this kid, and then you throw in a couple of other solid players. If the Tiger thing doesn't work out, get in Urkaz, get in Dobu. I mean, it could work. It could definitely work. He's very, very promising. But what I'm excited about is, forget everything. I just want to see him perform. I want to see him play. I want to see this 15-year-old tiny little kid just shit on all these has-been washed pros, just like stealing a paycheck in China, right? And showing them how it's fucking done.
Do you have much of a strong opinion on this Weibo team, Pilsky?
It's impossible to have a strong opinion on this team. Like you got Fjorn. He's known from his time on that Invictus lineup that actually went overseas. I think he had a different name, like was he X-Pro or Equal? One of those two guys, and he was kind of outshined by the Russians on that squad and some of the other Chinese players. I know Marek from eHome. He never really stood out in that team. Definitely outshined by some of the others, but he was okay. Killmatic is like your classic like Russian online player, kind of like the others in Invictus that we saw before, just running around, dropping good ratings and stuff, but you don't know like why he's there and how long he's sticking around for. Dreamer's sort of like a average player, and I don't think I've ever really seen Forsaken play, so I can't say anything whether he's going to be good or not. I'm not going to take Blair's word for it. I know that he has very poor judgment from experience, so
what do you mean? Blair was the one that was shitting on TyCS for the last 2 months, and now they've basically proven him right.
Dude. Like Tiger, I was saying good shit about Tiger. Look at them now.
Tiger's shitting on everyone.
How do you like him, Apples, Pilsky?
Bitch.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes over a larger sample size. Honestly, what I want to see happen is I want to see Forsaken just go to BTRG and Genius is on trial. Just put him on Lucid Dream, and then we can all be a little bit happier. And I don't even care about Team Weibo. If he's ready to play, chuck him on BTRG, mate.
That would be the ideal move, yes.
Yeah, that's 3 Indonesians on BTRG then.
I like how even in this scenario we're talking about saving Forsaken, Pilsky still tries to find a way to like help TyCS out sending Genius back. It just
so
can't
fucking
stop.
biased, man.
I know, it just can't stop. I mean, why don't you have an honorary citizenship in Thailand? Just move over there already, dude. Like elevate the scene, learn Thai, be a coach, be a player. Fuck it. Go jump in the server.
It's going to get to a point where Pilsky is just going to be banned from all Thai broadcasts because he's literally just going to be spouting like biased comments about the Thai team. Like, yeah, they're pretty good. And they're like literally the worst team in the tournament.
Look, it could work. It could work. They could definitely beat Vichy this time for sure. There's a chance.
All right. So how about for this then? For this Weibo team, right? If we were to put them into this Weibo Cup for example, and we sort of tried to put them ranked somewhere. Where do you actually think that they would sit within the Chinese scene? Like, as far as I'm concerned, definitely no chance of beating Tyloo or Vici. Lin Vision, probably behind Lin Vision as well. I reckon they're probably still below Gigi Hao as well. Like, I don't see this being a team that's going to be able to really compete particularly high in the Chinese scene, which I assume is where they're going to be competing, right?
Yeah, this is the team that gets 2-1'd by Lin Vision and Gigi Hao every time, in my opinion. That's exactly where they. Maybe sometimes they beat them, and then Vici just fucking dusts off.
So they might be like,
gets rid of him in the next stage of the bracket.
Between 6 to 8 within the Chinese region would be maybe somewhere where I'd probably sit them.
Yep, and I don't know what the point of assembling a roster like that is, especially if you're someone like Weibo who could actually have enough spending power.
Theoretically, yeah.
Actually make something happen in theory, whether they do want to do it or not.
I just find it crazy. Like, imagine like the Western world equivalent here would be Twitter or
Team Facebook
picking up a Counter-Strike team. And
I love the irony of a platform that's all about communication, putting together a team like.
This is literally the equivalent of them picking up like a tier 4 UK player, and then like, you know, some unknown Estonian no one's heard of, and then you pick up some Russian player playing for like Team Unique or something, who, you know, who are like at the ball game bottom last and already like, you think about picking up the most average players who don't have a common language and a potential prodigy, and you're like, yeah, this is Team Facebook.
Literally, what they should have done is just like bought out Tyloo or something like that. You know, I'm not sure how.
I think at this point, Tyloo kind of owns China.
Yeah,
I think it's
like,
wild. I don't know where the money comes from.
Where the fuck? Who even is Tyloo? That's the question. Like, who is?
So
Tyloo?
I do know Tyloo. I mean, there are obviously a lot of rumors here, and this is just pure speculation, right? But I mean, there's a company called the Tyloo something company, which is an energy company. Now, I don't know if there's an offshoot of that, or maybe it's the owner's son or something who owns Tyloo, but I do believe there's something called Tyloo Energy. I'm just going to Google that.
Does Tyloo even have teams in other games, or are they only a CS team?
I've never heard of any other games. Maybe they had something in a couple of other FPS games in between 1.6 and CSGO. All right, so Zhejiang Tyloo Energy Company, or Tyloo Oil and Gas International Holdings. Dude, energy companies, man, they have all the money in the world.
They do have good sponsorship, though, and they've always had very good sponsorship. And the thing is, if you're, as we see, I mean, the ultimate example of this is like that Scars team from Japan, who it's just like they literally signed every regional sponsor. Like they had like 30 sponsors or something, and they weren't shit sponsors either. They were like, it's like LG and shit like that, like major corporations. So, at the end of the day, if you're the best team in your country, the best team in your region for a very long time, and you do something well, I mean, a lot of the time you will see the regional subsidiary sponsor that team, not the global company, but the like regional, you know, Chinese Steel Series or whatever the hell you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I guess it's time to start looking to the future then, since we've been talking a lot about the past, a lot about these roster changes. Let's talk about Dreamhack Masters. It's in 2 weeks now. Actually, for you, Bleh, it's already started because you're on the EU and NA stuff. So congratulations for that. Seems like it's going well. But we're here to talk about Asia and ANZ. So obviously, you're not taking part in any of those broadcasts. That's by
I want to be watching them, though.
The Aussie boys, the alpha males down under. So we unfortunately couldn't find room for you.
Well, you know what? Me yelling hire us cunts for the past 6 episodes actually worked out. We all got hired.
Yeah, in one way or another. So thanks, Dreamhack, for that. And looking forward to casting this. But I got to say, I'm maybe a little bit disappointed by how the teams have sort of come into this competition. Let's start with Asia. We'll talk about ANZ after this as well. But, I mean, Tyloo, Vici, Lucid, and beyond, it's like, if you could choose now the 4 teams that you would have in this tournament, it would not be these 4 teams. And
Tyloo, Vici, Tiger, and
that's the third. The 4th one's the real question, isn't it?
Yeah, 1-3 looking good, but it's only on the Weibo Cup. Can't really gauge too much into that.
I wouldn't want another Chinese team either, I don't think.
Yeah, Maslai kind of shit the bed as well. They don't look that impressed. Maybe D13. Maybe Beyond. I'd still give Beyond a shot. Maybe. Again, stretching it. That's how few good teams there are right now. But Tiger should be there.
Definitely.
Tiger should 100% be there.
And this might be the only time you're ever going to hear me say this. But yeah, obviously the lineup's disappointing. But I'm actually I'm all for having different country representations, so I would like to see a Mongolian team and all different teams participating in this, and I've always been a big advocate for that. Even if one region is super dominant, I like to see, the different regions get different representation. So the fact that this is just two Chinese, two Thai teams in the tournament, a bit disappointing.
Yeah, either way, I mean, hopefully it'll be a good tournament. Hopefully we get another good rematch between Tyloo and Vici to continue that storyline. I think realistically for me, the Tyloo and Vici matchup is the only one that I'm actually kind of keen for, to be honest, because I think like Tyloo and Vici are just going to shit on Lucid and Beyond for whatever their matchups are in the group. And remember, this is a double elim bracket, so we get to see theoretically these matchups twice. But if we get to see Tyloo Vici in the lower bracket or in the upper bracket final and in the grand final, I think there's still some pretty cool viewing to come from this tournament. But Blair, what's your take? I mean, I personally want to see Vici win this. Like, I want to see them come back from Road to Rio, where they looked so good, got shit on in the playoffs, come back and just dominate.
That would be a nice fairy tale story, isn't it? I don't believe in fairy tales. They're just still gonna get shit on. It's going to be Zoking shitting the bed, going 10-30 or something, and then Almond's going to have one good map and just rough the rest of the server. Jamming and Kazi's going to try and overperform. Kazi's probably going to drop a 50 kill and then lose in overtime. And Tyloo's still going to play shitty CS and still win the thing. That's how it's going to be. That's how reality is. It's disappointing, but at least it's something we can expect.
You know what
I think?
I think I should just record what you've just said there and get a button that I can press every time I try to ask you a question about Tyloo and Vici, and I'll just play that clip back. Because it's the exact same thing you say every single episode.
And it happens every single fucking time.
I know, but that's the worst.
We already have that for my commentary, which is just me saying...
Breaking the economy of Marzalai.
Break the economy.
Of Marzalai. Break the economy of Marzalai was the
And
meme.
then we had the thing for Jordan's play-by-play is what literally happened on ANZ Champs is they clipped him going, ooh, and then they took every time he did that and then laid it on top of each other, and then every time someone got a kill, they just hit that button instead of him having to actually comment. And it was arguably more entertaining. So,
well,
that's amazing.
Pilsky, is there any hope for Vici going into Dreamhack?
Yeah. Look, I'm going to argue the same way as Blair, but for different reasons. The thing is that I think the Tyloo played pretty badly actually in Road to Rio, and they still came second and almost won the whole thing. So that means there's nothing but gas in the tank for this team. There's no way somebody can possibly play that badly again in another tournament. This team can only get better. Like, somebody literally played so shit, and it's so uncharacteristic for him. Like, all he has to do is just go back to his normal level, and all of a sudden, like, you don't even have a chance against this Tyloo team if they play like that, in my opinion. And they're still going to be like mediocre, inconsistent, but I've just seen it happen too many times. I can't predict for Vici, even if I think they're the better team. It's just Extremes Land, Road to Rio. Like, they beat them a couple times in online tournaments, but then every time I seem to watch, it doesn't happen. So, or every time I seem to cast, so they just choke it away. So yeah, I would imagine that Tyloo's going to win, and I would imagine that Tyloo's only going to look a little bit better than what we saw in Road to Rio in this competition. Although I want to see Vici give them a run for their money.
So TLDR, the situation is Zhongwo Ti, which I'm doing totally off of memory. So hopefully, if Kevin's watching, he can let me know how I did there. Yeah. But apparently, that means China's number one. So I've learned something. But yeah, that's really what it is. Like, Tyloo, Vici, I feel like are going to just shit stomp this. We're going to see them in the grand final. Hopefully we're going to get a good grand final out of that. So let's go ahead and talk about ANZ, which is on the total other end of the spectrum, right? Where we think like, okay, maybe Asia's going to be a bit disappointing. I actually think that this is what Road to Rio really should have been for ANZ, right? You've got Renegades, you've got Order, you've got Avant. You have got Chiefs, admittedly, with the roster changes coming through, it seems like that probably puts a little bit of a dampener on things. But as far as I'm concerned, this is what we should have had for Road to Rio, and it's going to be a much better tournament as a result. Not only because of the fact that we've got the top 4 teams in ANZ, Pilsky, but also because it's double elim. So theoretically, we should get like some great matches out of ANZ.
Dude, this is fucking spicy. This OS proponent of it. Avant, I think they have something to prove after after missing out on Road to Rio and having beaten, Order in ANZ champs and push Renegades a little bit. I think they really do want to establish that they're quite a good team, and I think they have the opportunity to do that. Order almost beat Renegades, should have beaten Renegades. So, this is going to be a sick tournament between them three. I think even Chiefs has like an upset potential over like an Avant or something like that, or an Order. I think like you can't really count out this team. It's like a big question mark, and they definitely have the firepower and the experience to be able to actually take a map here or there and push some of these teams when you wouldn't expect them to. So it's like three really, really solid teams that have looked in really good form that we know can push each other and actually take maps off of each other. And then a team that's a bit of a wild card that we know has the potential to win versus what you see in Asia, where it's like, two of these teams are not good, two of these teams are good, and one of them has like a matchup advantage for some reason. So it's like a spicy one versus like Resident Sleeper.
Anything you want to chime in here with, Bleh? I know obviously the ANZ region is not like your forte or anything like that, and quite frankly, I'm pretty sure you're not going to watch this one. But any sort of takeaways?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you guys. I think they should have been the Road to Rio, right? You look at Renegades Order. It was a close series, mind you. And this is a chance for Order to kind of like overturn things, kind of build a new order, so to speak. You have Avant gunning for that second spot and potentially even the first spot. It's going to be exciting. And even Chiefs, it's at least different, right? It's not going to be this middling performance I've had so far. They're either going to like fail miserably, which I'm okay with considering it's going to be a new lineup, or they're going to surprise everyone and be kind of like the curveball in the event. So while I would love to watch the games, but it's too early for me in the day, and considering how much CS you have to watch, I won't be able to really watch the games. But I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye and see like who's going to really come out and hopefully at least catch the finals.
True. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's probably going to end up being a very similar result to Road to Rio with Renegades winning. But at the very least, it's about the journey, not the destination for me. And I think the journey here is going to be much better than the one in Road to Rio because we have theoretically 4 competitive teams. So we'll see how it turns out. Anyway, that's the end of Geographically Challenged episode number 7. So let's go ahead and do the rounds as we normally do. We'll start with you, Bleh.
Yeah. You can follow me on my Twitter, on my Instagram. I don't post much on Instagram, but because I hate taking pictures, but I do talk shit about Asian Counter-Strike and general stuff. Follow me there, hire me, hire us, hire all of us. We have been hired, thankfully. Someone heard us in Dreamhack. I don't know who was watching the podcast, Elfish, but yeah, it looks like our prayers have come true, but hire us more, cunts.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you didn't go with like a keep hiring us or hire us more, I was going to be disappointed because that is exactly what it is now. Finally, something's paid off. Pilski, it's your turn.
Yeah, keep hiring us. I like eating. Shout out to Korean Valorant. Prayers for Korean CS and Thai CS. Tune into the Asia and ANZ, particularly the ANZ version of Dreamhack Masters, because we're going to be casting and covering all of that. And I dare say it's got the potential to, if you're willing to be a little bit open-minded, at least the Oceanic portion has the potential to be just as entertaining as the European or the American games, to be honest.
Look, Pilsy, I think that's probably going to be falling on deaf ears because anyone that's gotten this far into the podcast probably already interested in Asian or ANZ CS. We're not converting anyone at this point.
All right.
It's like preaching to the choir. It was a good try.
We still try, yeah.
And if there is anyone, then kudos to you. Shout outs.
Well, maybe I'll just save it for our death segment, where the first game rolls around and people tune in because they mistakenly clicking on it, thinking that it's maybe like a European or an NA game, and I can be like, please, this game will be good. I promise you.
Yeah.
Take my word for it.
Hopefully they will be good. Anyway, that's the end of the episode. Make sure you follow these boys. Make sure you follow me as well, Elfishguy on Twitter. And most importantly, I would appreciate a sub on YouTube. If you send me a DM on Twitter, my DMs are open, with proof that you've subbed on YouTube, I'll send you a funny picture of Bleh. That's how we're going to end the episode. See you next time.